sitting here and I'm thinking, how in the hell did I get over here? And I understand part of it. And part of it is I didn't really have any ambition. So ambition was given to me. I know from being a very young kid that my mother's side of the family, they were important in some way. When that came to a realization for me was we went up to my mother's home county, which was up in Donegal, which is in the northwest corner of Ireland, just outside of Ulster, which was occupied by the British. And my uncle was a politician and he was running for office. And we went to my uncle's farm, who, as it turned out, was a turkey farmer. And my uncle Neil, his name is Neil T. Blaney, he's actually my godfather, was having a political rally in the town of Letterkenny. And we congregated, I mean, I was a part of a mass of people that they lit lamps or, what do you call them? Torches, like in Frankenstein. That was my only reference. They tarred the top of them and then they set them on fire. And I remember we were walking down a country road and these were lit up above us. And I was 6, maybe 7. And we went down into the square at Letterkenny, and there were these trucks lined up, and it was a huge crowd of people. And the procession that I was in was headed by my uncle Neil. There were loudspeakers, there was a truck bed, and he was up on the truck bed. And I remember he was speaking, and it was echoing around the town square. My country, as I come to understand later on, is we're a colony, and we're one of the oldest colonies, and one of the oldest British colonies. And the British, pretty much the reason why I am so erudite and facile with language, the King's English, is that they pretty much smacked our own language out of us. And our language was Gaelic, and our culture was Gaelic, our sports were Gaelic, our music was Gaelic, and there were Gaelic football clubs and Gaelic hurling clubs, and there were Ardeshes in the centre of town where the girls danced the Irish reels and stuff like that. There were a couple of schools that only spoke Gaelic, but for the most part, I was anglicised and didn't even realise it. My sister Joanne sent her children to all Irish speaking schools, so they got their primary and secondary education speaking Gaelic. And Joanne and my other 2 sisters used to go out to the west coast of Ireland, which was the Gaeltacht. And they would go there to stay with families and to learn Irish. I never did that. I pretty much rebelled against that and stayed in Dublin and played soccer, played football, played the British sport. And I loved it, you know, and I loved the British punk bands. At the same time, I'm older now and I'm a musician and I'm playing music and stuff. And now what I realize is that the culture that would have fostered the things that I am looking to explore and to become good at now would have been there had I lived in a more rural setting where music and poetry and dance and all that stuff wasn't crushed out. And the British, being colonists and greedy colonists, had, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which is, 100 years and progressing, had set up in the north most of its linen factories and stuff, and they had machines and they had cheap labor, and some of the cheapest labor was the Irish peasant, Irish Catholics. And then what they had done in centuries before that, they had offered free land to Protestants and Presbyterians in the north of the country if they would go over and swear their allegiance to the Queen of England, and in return they would get Irish land, and the farmers would be kicked off their land and sent out to the west coast of Ireland, and there's a term for it, and it was the province was Connacht in the west, and principally it was to hell or to Connacht, and it was unarable land, it was not good land, and that was by design. They sent the Irish off their wonderful farms up in the north of the country so as they could do the plantation of Ulster, and that's how they went about throughout the world consolidating the places that they took over. We didn't learn much about that, but it bled in. We were over in my aunt's house. It was a Saturday afternoon. I think it was somebody's birthday. And I don't know, we were sitting in there drinking lemonade or something like that. And then there were these like thunder, but it was hard, like somebody was cracking the wall with a sledgehammer. And it turned out that I think it was the UVF or the UFF or the Protestants, they were a military band or wing of the Ulster, I think it was the Ulster Volunteer Force. They planted car bombs in Dublin city centre, and I don't know what the number was. There was probably, I can remember, maybe there was about 4 explosions. Town was filled. It was a Saturday afternoon, and these cars had bombs planted in them, and they exploded. And some of the descriptions in the papers, I remember reading almost every single one of them, and bits of cars just took off, airborne, went through people. There were people blown through windows. There were people with pieces of cars just throughout their body. I don't know how many people were killed, but you can't ignore that. I might have been 7 or 8, and there it is. I'm Irish, and being away from Ireland as long as I've been away, I'm talking maybe 30 years, 40 years almost, I realized that being a Dublin native and speaking English is not the authentic me. I'm looking and looking. I want to be more authentic. Everyone wants to be authentic, but I got to break through. And now I find that I'm much more interested in the Celtic culture that we had before the Brits came along and before the Catholic Church got into our country. The British cut a deal with the Catholic Church that the Catholic Church would use their methodologies on the children of our country to tell them that you are born with sin, you're already a sinner, and we're going to punish you. We're going to punish you for the sins that you have committed by being a child. And they got, in return for sublimating and frightening a whole culture and mentally enslaving a whole culture, they got land. I long for that ancient Ireland, the land of the Druids. And Ireland is undergoing somewhat of a revolution, and it's trying to find itself. And I am a poet, and most of my poetry is in English, but it comes from a subconscious place, and I hope that my subconscious will reveal more to me, more of an affinity with the ancient Ireland, that the mountains are, and that the springs are, and that the islands are. And anytime I go back to Ireland, and I can get back out to the Aran Islands, I would love to go to the Blasket Islands, or the other ones further away where Star Wars was recently made. I can't remember what they're called, but sometimes you have to go through historically oppression before you can fully realize yourself. And in a way, I have an affinity, and I feel an affinity with the tribes in this country that had their cultures taken away from them and are in a struggle to find their way back. And that might be about as much as I have to say on the subject of me, Ireland, the IRA, the British, my upbringing, and my exodus to the United States of America. That's me, and it's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So, best of luck to you. Go fuck yourself.
Hey, are you recording this? The fuck? The fucking... Get the fuck...